So this PC is something different. You probably know I don't do RGB PCs, but this one looks nice and is very, very tasteful PC. And not just that, it also makes total sense why this is built like that, has some features, and also, wait a second, what's that over there? Never mind that. This is where things are at. This is all Intel video editing PC, and
is that a Threadripper build though?
That PC, yeah, that's got a Threadripper, $5,000 Threadripper CPU.
Wow.
And is that the RX7900XTX limited edition there?
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, there's two. There's the best of AMD and the worst of Intel in there.
Oh, I see what you're doing in there.
Intel Quicksync on Threadripper platform. That's gonna be a beast of an editing rig, isn't it? You're telling me? That baby costs $500 shy of 10 grand.
Ooh.
Bad boy. And you're not gonna talk about it. You're scared, aren't you? I'm not scared. Move! You're scared? You want me to talk about it? Well, I'll talk about it. Well, go on then. I don't think you're ready for it. I was born ready. Let's go, baby. Well, let's rewind and actually build the PC. And I've got a few things to reveal about the Threadripper Dual GPU PC. And what did you forget? Sponsored segment. Sheesh. This video is being brought to you by Team Group and their Christmas event, Determine Your Inner Character. They're inviting you to do their psychological test and enter their Christmas giveaway. In order to participate, all you have to do is click on the link in the video description below and answer just a few simple questions. Completing the test only takes about a minute. After the test is completed, you can find your character trait by Team Group. Apparently, I am a gear fanatic. Well, I can't say the test didn't work. Go find out your character trait and feel free to share the results on social media. And don't forget to scroll further down and enter the giveaway. You can win one of these 5 prizes here. Check out Team Group and their Christmas event, Determine Your Inner Character, through the links in the video description below, and don't forget to enter the giveaway. Alrighty, this is going to be an interesting build, and I am so excited to put this CPU inside this motherboard. This is the Ryzen Threadripper 7980X, 64-core Threadripper. Oh, yeah. And then the Threadripper goes in just like that. Then we take the socket cover off, double checking that there's nothing inside, nothing on the CPU either. Then when this is done, we'll just click it down there. Yep, that looks good. Now, very important that you use this included actual wrench, because it does have this like safety clutch on it to put exactly the right tension on this, even though you could get like an iFixit kit that potentially has the same kind of end there, and you could like use the screwdriver here, but no, that is not a good idea, because you might under or over tighten the screw, which is not good. Now for this build, or for these CPU reviews, AMD actually sent NZXT Kraken 360mm AIO, which I would have to use this bracket for. You know, we'd put it in there just like that. But what I don't like about this, and why I don't recommend this, is because this doesn't cover the whole IHS. With these new Threadripper CPUs, you've got these dies going all the way to the side in there, quite a bit actually to the side there as well, which we want to make sure that the heat gets covered on all of them. And that's why I want to use this Lictech TR42 from NMAX, and that covers the whole IHS of this. Now, this is an old box for this, but actually this is the second version of the cooler. They've got a new design. I've got the second one there as well somewhere. But as far as I can tell, I think the socket holes here are exactly the same as we have for the previous SP5, SP6 socket. What was the socket on the previous called? STRX40? The socket on the WRX80 motherboards. I checked and they should be lining up, so I'm gonna get this one because this is a new platform. There's nothing yet out there. I don't know all the information, but that's what we're gonna go for. Now, I'm not a big fan of the design of this. I don't think this looks particularly good. I think there's better designs out there, but I believe it gets installed just like that. Boom, it goes there like that. So what we'll have to do now is get these little guys in there. So that covers the IHS perfectly. And as I can see, all the RAM slots as well on both sides, very well covered. So this is gonna work just fine. So before we're gonna put that one in, I'm gonna take the RAM sticks now. So this is G.Skill Zeta R5 Neo. This is actually quite a fast RAM kit. So this is 64 megatransfers per second, CL32. That's quite good. And 4 of them, altogether 128 gigabytes. Bear in mind, this platform actually supports 1 terabyte on this motherboard of RAM, but I don't think there is these kits out there yet. Actually, I won't put these ones in yet, just because doing the thermal paste, otherwise I won't be able to spread it nicely out like I want to. A touch of alcohol. A lot of people don't like that I'm using toilet paper for this, but here's what I do. Firstly, I'll clean it with the toilet paper, and if there's any little bits that came off the toilet paper, I'm actually wiping it off with a microfiber cloth, making it all nice. Look at that. Ugh. Some kind of oxidization and whatever is on here. Okay, that's a bit better. That was probably slightly too much. I've got quite a bit left over there. Dim sticks now. Now the SSDs. For that, we're going to be using 2 drives, one for the OS and one for the project as a creator. There's 2 Ender 2 SSDs underneath this heatsink. They're both Gen 5 slots, X4 slots, and I do have a Gen 5 drive, the A380 Legend 970, but that comes with a heatsink, which means that then I'll have to put another one in there that comes with a heatsink as well. But then I'm not sure if the graphics card is actually going to go over them with a heatsink when the heatsink's so high. So as you can see, if I plug this one in there, that is higher than that, so it might actually hit the graphics cards. So can't use that one, but I'm gonna go with the second best. I have the Solidigm P44 Pro 1 terabyte drive, which is one of my favorite drives ever because it's just so good in random read and write speed. And for an OS drive, that's like the perfect drive there for this. It's actually faster than the Samsung 990 Pro as an OS drive. And for the project drive, we're going to be using this FireCuda 530 from Seagate. This is incredible drive for projects because you can hammer it with very large files and it's still going to keep it under the terabyte written spec, you know, because you can rewrite 70% of the drive every single day for the next 5 years, and that's still like warranty period, which just means very durable drive. Taking both the heat sinks off here. So for the case, we're going to be using something special, and I'm going to have to move this out of the way a little bit. This is an Acer Sanctum, and it's very interesting because it's like a cube base. The motherboard layout is actually flat. The GPU is going to run upright like that. You'll see the motherboard is there. But first I need to figure out, okay, everything just comes off like that, I guess. Side panels literally all just pop out like that. Well, and so does the back panel here, which is all just mesh, or whichever one is back and the front. These side panels all come off as well. That's all the front and the sides. There's a little hatch in the back over here, which is pretty cool actually, because when this comes off, you can just literally get access to your hard drives, which in here we'll have our screws. I hope there is some instructions inside there as well. Okay, you have to download it from there. So I think I'm gonna put this one back because I don't need access to this bit. So I guess what we're gonna do is just put the motherboard in. Okay, the downside is that none of the motherboard standoffs are nubbins. So the motherboard just slides around and you'll have to like screw it in straight away now. Okay, and now this AIO could go this way, for example, and it could blow the air in, and then this could blow the air out. Or we could get this to blow the air out from there, and then it comes in from here, so the airflow kind of comes like that. But there's also GPUs that are producing air that actually goes up, and then I think they're gonna most likely heat up the radiator because they'll be quite hot in here because they don't blow it exactly out. So if we can get it to come in from here and then out from there, and then also in from the sides and then out from there, which right now this seems like these are the right orientation. But the cables, oh, the cables. The cables should be coming down from here, and then you can see they will go like down, and you can hide the cables through here. Yeah, the wrong way, so I'll have to swap these around. So now, once the fans are swapped, what we can do is get all of these cables come through this hole in the middle there. Now I'll take some actual normal fan cables. I've got these fans like with the long screws on the AIO, but just to make it easier, I'm going to cheat a little bit and put these fan screws actually in that will hold the AIO here. Okay, 4 of these will do. In fact, 3 of these will do. And now once these cables come down from there, I can undo this and actually get these off, and then put all of these nicely in there like that, which means you can hide all of those cables going in. That goes up there. So this is CPU fan. The header's just behind there. See, we can plug it in there. And the rest of the cables throw down there just like that. Now, look how clean this is. There's literally no cable shown. It all just goes down there. Voila, look at that. All of these cables from this down there. Now comes the part where we have GPU install, and this is where things get quite interesting. I want to see if we can actually install all 3 GPUs. The best of Intel, best of AMD, and best of NVIDIA. I'll get them. We'll have to start trying to see where is this gonna fit, but I'll have to take all of these off. Okay, the interesting thing here is because the front is 16 slot, that is 16 slot, and then all the way to the bottom, that's 16 slot. But the 16 slot on the bottom only takes like 1 slot because this little bit on the side here will be in the way. So yeah, see, if you put anything on the bottom there, you can't get it in. Let's try this first. So if we go all the way to the top, you can't actually, I don't think you can plug anything in here in the secondary slot. That will be very, 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 very tight. We've got AMD, this is the Radeon 7900XTX, okay, built in here. But now, if we want to get something else in here, so I guess the bottom slot here in this case really isn't useful because, you know, whatever you put in here, that's like only for 1 slot. So you can only utilize it for something like the ASUS expander card here, or whichever company really. And if you plug that one in there, boom, that's going to be the one in the bottom. And if we do want to run a 1419 here as well, it does actually fit. So right now, there is 1490 and 7900XTX in, although the 1490 card, I believe that is an X8 slot, so it's going to run PCIe Gen 4 X8. So that's an interesting place here where actually we have space for only 2 cards really. that's what I mean about this motherboard. It would be awesome if this slot here was on there, because then you could put a full, like a 3 slot card in the front, or 2.5 slot card in the front, and then another like X16 just right in there. So I feel like this is a waste of time. Even if this little battery, that could have been like above it and that in there, it would have made more sense, but it doesn't right now. So it just covers this slot, so you can't put a GPU in there. And I wish this case would be just like this much wider this way, because then you could actually utilize this bottom slot in there, a few more slots, and you can put a full card in here. But I guess that's the fault of this case. So what I'm gonna do instead is actually install the power supply. Which for this, we're gonna be using the Seasonic Prime PX 1600 watt power supply, PX 1600. Now this bad boy is gonna give us enough power to power everything. So let's plug some stuff in. Now, one more thing is, because this is an eATX, which means extended ATX motherboard, because it extends out a little bit further than normal ATX board, these like holes there where you can put the 24-pin motherboard power or these PCIe powers here, they kind of covered. So I had to take these screws off to lift the motherboard slightly and then push these down. There is a nice little cutout of the motherboard there, but underneath there, we can't use those slots, unfortunately. All right, it's been a minute since this build, and actually I've kind of built it, but now we're gonna have to complete it, because I decided to actually test the Threadripper CPUs before I'm gonna complete the build, and then I'm gonna have to repeat kind of half apart or something like that. There's a few things that I did, and we have to configure or go across some problems to actually get to the look of the PC that I'm wanting here. And this is a very important thing here, because some of the high-end PC motherboards don't have certain features if you want to get a certain look. Here's what I mean. This motherboard doesn't have an ARGB header. So if you have an RGB fans, like the ones even that come with the case, you're not going to be able to control them, because there's no like even a controller that comes with the case that you can literally just simply, you know, scroll through colors or something like that. They just won't be on because there's nowhere to plug them in. Then you have to look at, okay, what are some of the options? How can you control them? You might be able to get a simple controller that literally flicks through the colors or something like that. What I went for is this Corsair ICUE Commander Core XT. And this one here has RGB headers, the 6 RGB headers that you can control separately in the software there. And then there are some fan headers if you want to control the fans as well as temperature headers, and then some of the RGB like strips and things like that. There's 2 temperature headers there as well. But then you might be saying, yeah, but these RGB headers there are completely different than what you see on a usual motherboard or the usual 5-volt ARGB header. And that's why I've bought these little converter cables. So as you can see, on one end, we have the 4-pin Corsair header that goes in that box. As you can see here, I've actually got 2 of them in use here already. So one of them is over here, and then you can see another one here. So I've got the slot 1 and 6 in use, and that converts the 4-pin to this 3-pin ARGB male header, so you can actually control any of the devices either separately and so on. There's different companies that make cables like these converters, so I bought 5, I think. 5 of these cables, just so like future as well, when I need to, you know, use this Corsair thing but don't actually have RGB header. If you want to do it with this board, for example, then you're gonna have to use something like that. Then the other fans that I actually added here are the Lian Li Unifan AL120 version 2 RGB header. And these are the ones we used on the Batman build as well, because they have like separate RGB for the fans in the middle, and then the side there you have like little corners that you can control separately. And that adds like a really nice effect. Plus they're actually very good in performance as well. Slightly pricey, but at this point, at this PC build, do you know what? It doesn't really matter. Now I kept the lower fans here underneath exactly the same because I thought you're not going to really see the RGB there, and they're just going to glow red onto the PC in there. So there's no point really in getting those changed. So I kept them the same. The fans on the AIO, I'm going to keep the back exactly the same as the like stock fans because you're not going to see them once the panel is on in the back. But these are going to pull in as well. So they're going to be actually push and pull configuration, pulling through. I know it's not ideal. We should be using the same fans, but honestly, right now it's fine. And then we'll push the air in and then it goes out from the side. So the airflow kind of comes in from the sides and then out from the back. I want to create a positive air pressure in there. Also did some cable management, but now I know it's all working. And now I have to take the 32 core Threadripper out and put the 64 core back on, take the test bench GPU out, and then put the right GPUs in. So let's go. Okay, so the CPU is now back installed, and then the RGB and the pump header is like going nicely around and hidden quite well as well. So now let's install the GPUs, and we're actually gonna go with the Radeon 7900XTX here, and that's gonna go to the top slot. I have to undo the motherboard here a little bit to actually slide the 3 power cables through that hole inside there, but the motherboard like covers half of it, so because the end is a little bit thicker they won't go through. But now because I can lift the end, I can get them through. 1, that's 2. Okay, screws back. I just realized because we're using this GPU does have 2 5-volt ARGB headers here as well. So I could have connected those fans into the GPU. It would have not been like a nice cable management, but it would have been possible there. Now the cool thing about this case is that if you did pre-route the cables already, you could just open this back little lid and then have your 3.5-inch SSDs or hard drives, boom, just slot them in there, and you have like kind of easy access to them, which I like quite a lot. So all we have to do now is put the glass and lid panels back on. Can you see how the cutout of this corner and then the GPU are actually very, very similar there? Let's plug the power in. Okay, moment of truth. It's draining the memory and other things there right now. So the airflow should be that these fans underneath there suck the air in from here and from the back here, because there's mesh panels in here. So it goes in there, pushes it up through there, and then it pushes in from here as well, and then pushes out from the back. If you have it on the table, there's pretty good I/O port as well. 2 USB Type A's, Type C, headphone and mic jacks separately here as well. Oh, posting, yes. Okay. Oh. So, the PC is built now. There's been a few things in between since the last clip, but what we want to know now is how good is this PC? So as you can see, here we are. If we go to Task Manager, we can see the Threadripper 7980x 64 cores. Look at all of these threads there. Loads of things going on. Memory, 128 gigs, 4 slots, 6400 mega transfers per second, our 2 SSDs. We've got the Intel Arc GPU and the Radeon 7900XTX there as well. So let's open up the hardware monitor and see how good is the CPU in just Cinebench, okay? So here we go. Are you ready for this? Multi-core, boom. Look at that. We completed the multi-core, pulled 350 watts, peaked at 62 degrees. The fans didn't even ramp up because it was so fast. And we scored just 5,000 points shy off 100,000 points. That's absolutely insane. Let's go one more time. '66 peak there, and then drops down when the fans kick in. 59. Look at that. Slightly more. 95,000 points almost. That's absolutely insane power efficiency per like actual work done. Absolutely insane. So here's what we're gonna do. While we talk about the rest of the benchmarks, I'm gonna let this run for 30 minutes, absolutely pegging it in there, okay? We're just gonna zero this now and then see how high the temperatures were there, then average clock speeds and all sorts of things. What did it do? So one of the first things I want to talk about is the two GPUs in there, right? We've got the Intel and the Radeon. And as you might have heard from the intro, the idea of this was to get Intel Quicksync on Threadripper system with just adding an extra GPU there while having like the main GPU as well, because the 7900XTX is very, very good GPU for video editing, but it doesn't quite give you the Quicksync. And if we added the ARC A380 there, which has killer media engines inside, very similar to the iGPU what we have on normal systems, then you can get absolutely insane timeline performance and then also rendering performance for the AMD GPU when it uses that. But here's a few buts. Setting this up is not quite as simple as you might think, and the software actually gets confused which GPU to use. So I was testing Premiere Pro 24 on this, and I wanted to see, okay, if we just exported a massive project, what would be the difference with having the Intel GPU or not having the Intel GPU. So if you look at the results, you can see that with Intel and AMD GPU, we exported the video or the project in Premiere Pro in 23 minutes and 56 seconds. Now, bear in mind, this is not a project that only utilizes hardware decoding or encoding. So there's lots of different things going on in the timeline. Some of B-raw codecs, some of H.264, H.265 graphics. So if the software was smart enough, it would use the correct hardware at different parts of the video to actually encode it and put it together, if that makes sense. But now I thought, okay, let's try without the Intel GPU. Unplugged the Intel GPU, and then did the same test again, exported it. But now we're exporting the video with just 13 minutes and 25 seconds. So we cut this like almost in half the rendering time by not adding the Intel GPU, which I thought, okay, that's random. Why does the exporting favor the Intel GPU over the AMD GPU? So I thought, let's try timeline performance, because we've done the Premiere Pro timeline test loads on the channel. So I know that there's different codecs that work on different hardware. And when doing the tests on the timeline, the PC always favors Intel GPU over AMD, even though at some points AMD would be much, much better. For example, some of the higher end codecs, AMD would be so much better, or sometimes even the CPU would be so much better, but it does want to favor the Intel GPU. The Intel GPU only has 6 GB of VRAM compared to the 24 what the AMD has. So the interesting thing is that it almost always like favors Intel over AMD, which is slightly interesting, and this could be just how Adobe works with this, or maybe this is not utilized or actually optimized for multi-GPU systems in Premiere Pro. I really hope that Adobe is going to fix that, or perhaps I'm going to give myself a benefit of doubt and maybe I did something that I didn't know how to do, or it works somehow, how, I don't know, some settings somewhere, but I couldn't find it, I couldn't get it to work. If someone knows, please let me in the comment section below. But I hope that Adobe fixes this now, because the more and more we have lower end Intel GPUs where we can just add them into the system, even onto the like NVIDIA cards, the ideal way would be to put like a 1490 in there, AMD card in there, an Intel card in there, and if the software could utilize and use the best parts of all of the hardware, then that would be the ideal world. So can we get Intel Quicksync on Threadripper? Yes, but it might come with a cost of actually losing out on some of the better GPUs. For example, if we put an A770 there with more VRAM, we would be less bottleneck, but it still would utilize the A770 more than the 7900XTX, which would actually be better in a lot of the cases. And also, if you think about it, Intel has dual media engines and AMD has dual media engines in there. If Adobe could utilize all of these we could get insane encoding performance of the video if we could actually utilize all, let's say some of them work on these frames and some of them these frames, and make them, you know, work at the same time. I know I'm making it sound like it's a very simple thing, but that would be an insane performance that Apple could never actually beat, because Apple has, you know, only certain media engines in their GPUs, and now everything's integrated. But now with this system, we have the ability to upgrade, add loads of GPUs and get insane media engine in performance. I know AMD has even the Xilinx encoders cards. Why don't we put one more encoder card and utilize all of these media engines inside? Premiere Pro should be like the most used video editing program in the world. Surely that program would be the first one to support actually a support for something like that, especially at the high-end system like that. Would like to see this actually work, because now this insane Threadripper doesn't look necessarily as fast as some of the Intel systems that you can build for like 1/10 of the price, which just shows the bottleneck in the software to actually utilize all of the hardware. That is way too powerful for this. But let's take a look at some of the benchmark results, because I did run all of the creative application benchmark on this without the Intel GPU, because I thought I'm not going to bottleneck the results by just having the Intel, you know, GPU in there. And when I was testing this with the systems to trying to see, you know, which GPU gets utilized in DaVinci Resolve benchmarks, for example, it always favors the Intel one over the AMD one. So firstly, in Photoshop, we get 1,406 points. I know it shows the memory here as 4,800 megahertz, but it doesn't show the XMP or Expo profile there. It is actually 6,400, this one. And it's pretty good score actually for Photoshop, but it's not best bang for buck for Photoshop. Really getting this score for Photoshop, you can get it with much cheaper hardware, but it's not bad. So what I'm showing is you're not going to be so much slower with the 64 core if Photoshop is part of the workflow. Let's say if it was part of the workflow, but Photoshop would be horrendous, you'd think, okay, I couldn't do it. But what I want to show is this Threadripper can really do everything. It's not the fastest at Photoshop, but it's not slow either. It's like very good up there. Then in DaVinci Resolve, we get pretty insane scores here. Over 3,000 in extended, and standard overall is 3,500. As you can see, Fusion score is very high as well because of the single core performance and so on. And GPU effects 190, so the 7900XTX really shines in DaVinci Resolve, does a really, really good job. In Lightroom Classic, we're getting 1,885, which is like right on the top there, if not the best score I have ever reached. Like right in within 1% of the top like PCs I have ever tested in there in active and passive scores. The passive score is especially impressive because of all the 64 cores, but still we're not able to like utilize all of those cores. The 32 core one would perform very, very similar just for Lightroom exports, for example, or passive scores. And now in Premiere Pro, the extended overall score 861 and overall score 1,191. Very impressive score as well, especially the long GOP and interframe scores. If we're looking at standard or extended there as well, these are the H.264 and H.265 codecs, and those scores are really, really good. So if you're working with that GPU that accelerates those media engines, it is very, very good playing the back end on there. Interestingly, I would have expected the raw score to be a little bit better here, extended raw score. It is very, very good, but not that much better than what we see on some of the other mainstream CPUs, because the 64 core has insane power to push through. We'd have to do a live stream of this. We're testing like this and perhaps like Intel side by side to see which one would actually be better. And then finally, After Effects, overall score 1,419. You can see again very high scores. The multi-core score is absolutely insane there, and perhaps RAM preview, but the tracking is slightly lower. The Ryzen 9 7950X, for example, would be better at tracking, so depending what you're doing. And all of these benchmarks, the very important note is that you just want to look at the scores that are relevant for your workflow. If you don't do certain codecs, or if you only work this or that, then pick these bits out and these are the ones relevant to you. Sometimes the overall score is not actually relevant for you. The under or like the sub scores might be much more relevant for you. Another thing I want to mention is that when you've got the hardware info 64 open, then it makes these fans flash. The Corsair ICUE and hardware 64, they don't like working together. So just so you know, if this gets flashing, it's because of this. I'll show you later when I close it, the flashing goes away. So now we've been running this test here back to back for about 15 minutes. And if we are looking at our results now, I'm going to close it now. As you can see, we've peaked at 72.4 degrees. That's like 100% utilization, 350 watts. Some of these CC dies there, as you can see, 87. That was a little bit higher there. VRM1, VRM2, 60, 59 degrees, all right there as well. You can see that the heatsink fans there are going quite fast, 5,000 RPMs there. They're running quite fast. They're very small fans, but they're trying to cool that baby down there. DDR5s are actually slightly warm there, 73 as well, 75 maximum, about 70 degrees as you can see there. Where are they? Oh yeah, they're the ones that are next to the VRMs on the top. Those channels are actually quite warm, as you can see, the upper ones. Where are they? They're now cooling down there, but 73.8 and 60. You want to have a good airflow over this case, but this is one of the downsides of this case, that because of the airflow of this, it doesn't actually allow airflow over the motherboard. So there's nothing really blowing over the VRMs, only the fans in there because of this like laid down configuration. It kind of blows over it and then out from the top, and all the warm air comes out from the back. But that's like not ideal for motherboard. It would be much better in a conventional like intake from the side, blows over the motherboard and then out from the back. That type of airflow would be much better for the motherboard and, you know, VRM temperatures. So a few very important tips when you're thinking about building this. Number one, the 360mm AIO for this CPU is absolutely amazing. Now, I highly recommend replacing the included fans, because in this configuration, they're not very good at pulling the air through a mesh in the front. They're perhaps good if it's mounted on the top and there's like free airflow and they're just pushing it through from the top. But in this configuration, they're not so very good. Secondly, what I would do is perhaps set the fans to exhaust out from the case from the top rather than intake from the top, because then you'd have a little bit of a better airflow. Right now, I feel like it's getting mixed up in there with too much like turbulence, and the airflow is not as optimized as if we just had intake from there and then outtake from the top and goes out in there. And number three, I think this is a very interesting looking case. Looks pretty cool. It's got a lot of usability features that I like. I think the front panel here, and when it sits on the desk, it does look very, very good. But perhaps the laid down option there is not so good. But it is very easy to change some of the things or open up the side panels if you want to access something, or if you want to just fix something very quickly in there. It is quite easy to do that, and to add hard drives or to remove them, very nice as well. Now you think this is the end of the video? Well, you might be actually wrong, because the end comes very suddenly. Once you've checked out the links in the description below, there's one last very important thing that I want you to remember, because that is going to change everything, how you ever going to build the PCs, if you're going to build them or not. So very important to remember this. Number one thing that's very, very crucial is do not ever tell